Hello, good day everyone. For today's video, we will going to discuss our assigned topic, which is Chapter 8, Designing, Evaluating Portfolio Assessment in the Classroom. Before we proceed to the discussion proper, allow me to read first the learning objectives. At the end of the chapter, the students will be able to first develop portfolio assessment, second, evaluate portfolio assessment utilized in the classroom. This chapter describes the processes of planning and implementing portfolio assessment in the classroom. Since you are already know the nature of portfolio assessment, its purposes, types, and other components that was discussed the previous groups. At this point, we will clarify the steps in designing, evaluating portfolio. So, throughout the discussion, we will know about the general procedure that you may use in crafting and implementing portfolio assessment in the classroom. So, what is portfolio development, or what comes of your mind if you were hear of these terms? So, I know most of the people, if you hear the word portfolio, there are many different images comes up to your mind. So, other think about compiling their works for review. For teacher, often it contains gather sample of their lesson plans or documents that reflect their knowledge and skill. So, if we talk about portfolio development, it requires learners to collect and integrate examples of their work and allows the teacher to assess their learners as well. The assessment tool provides opportunities of the both learners and teachers to better understand the educational process in a wider perspective. So, in designing portfolio assessment, it requires advanced and careful planning. It begins a clear idea about the purpose of assessment. So, in developing portfolio assessment, we have here the sub-steps that we need to know because that will be your guide or direction if you are test to make portfolio assessment. So, the steps for developing portfolio assessments are aligned with the teaching and learning assessment to the curriculum and teaching and learning activity as well. So, the first steps is you have identified overall purpose and focus. The designs and use of portfolio must begin with a clear description of your purpose and focus. So, in the first part of your portfolio, you can state their description about your purpose having that portfolio. Or you have to state there who are the main highlight and focus of that portfolio. Or you can ask yourself with these questions. Why do I want a portfolio? And what learning targets and curriculum goals will it serve? So with this, you can clearly identify why you want your students to create a portfolio. So here is a list of questions on how to prepare and use portfolio. So these questions are your guide, or it can be your guide or direction in preparing to use portfolio. First, we will construct the portfolio. Second, what type of portfolio do you want to use? Third, what are the purposes and objectives of the portfolio? Fourth, what categories of work samples should go into the portfolio? Fifth, what criteria will students or group use to select their entries? And last, who will develop the rubrics to assess and evaluate the portfolio? So, portfolio may be used to assess understanding but are ideal for assessing product, skill, and reasoning target. So, this is especially true for the multi-dimensional skills such as writing, reading, and problem solving that are continually improved and demonstrate through products. So, with extensive self-reflection, critical thinking is an important target. So these are two important targets. So students also develop metacognitive and decision making. As with other performance assessment, according to Macmillan 2007, portfolios generally are not very efficient for assessing knowledge target. So, so why is it? So it is important to distinguish between learning targets for individual work sample of the content of the portfolio as a whole. The targets that reflect all contents tends to be a broader and more general, such as develop as a reader, adapts writing to audience, speak clearly, and adapt writing style to different purposes. So here is the example of assessing reading skills performance, which shows the alignment of teaching and learning goal, activities, and assessment tasks, which include portfolio evidence. We have here the goal, sample classroom activity, portfolio evidence, and assessing tools. So in the first part, we have here the goal. In the goal, we have the basic reading skill for beginning or weak readers. For the sample classroom activity, we have read simple text. And the portfolio evidence, word bank that includes the list of words mastered, selected, text I can read, completed reading tasks. And the assessment tools is individual progress report, peer complement, self-peer assessment, checklist, and rating scale. So the next steps is we have to identify the physical structure. So once the purpose and target had been clarified, we need to think of the physical structure of the portfolio. So here are some practical questions affect the successful use of portfolio in your classroom. So first, what it look like? Where will the student place the outputs? Asa gibutang? What type of container is appropriate? Unsay ang aya na butanganan sa portfolio? Do you need file folder, clear book, plastic bins? So, need ba to nila? How are the materials to be organized? Categorically, numerically, alphabetically, by subject, or in other ways? So, dapat guni siya mahimo. Where can students store the portfolios for easy access? So, unsang pag-arrange ang portfolio para dali makitaan sa mga estudyante? Categorically ba, numbering ba, or alphabetical ba? Para dali siya nimo makitaan or mahibaw-an sad sa mga estudyante. So, easy access na siya sa mga students, teachers as well. So, let us remember, if students cannot manage and access their materials effectively, they will become discouraged. So, you may need your original intention based on the answer and see practical considerations, the choices of product and work outputs influence students in what to include in their portfolio. So the next steps is determine the appropriate organization and sources of content. So the content of portfolio consists as entries which provides assessment information about the content and processes identified in the dimensions to be accessed. The range of sample is extensive and must be determined to some extent by the subject matter and the instruction as presented in the table on the next page. So as what you can see, here a table of different examples of artifacts for portfolio by subject area, such as language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. So, in language arts, the students are expected to write poetries, short story, song, academic writings such as informative, persuasive, and argumentative essays. In the mathematics, so students, there are more in figures, shapes, solutions, and formulas. Next is science. The content of the portfolio may be of this following: prediction, prior experience, data tables, drawing scale, graph, and conclusion based on data. And last is social studies. So, social studies as presented of every society, since it is a study of how society works and the people in it, and of course the community. So, writing description of different cultures, institutions, and professions, drawing artifact, timeline, and so much more. So, the fourth steps for developing portfolio assessment is determine student reflections guidelines. Below are example of questions which are helpful in determining students' reflections. These questions help the students gain metacognitive skills, including self-reflection and assessment. So the reflection is the most important part because the students can express their feelings and ideas and their experience while doing the said portfolio. So listed below are the different reflective questions that the students can answer and the teacher can give as their basis. So describe the steps that you use to complete today's activity. Which steps really help you complete the activity and which one were less useful? What would you change next time? So if you read further down, you can read the different reflective questions that the students may use their bases in order to put something on the reflection part of their portfolio. So it is really important. This is where emotional, spiritual part of the students are located. The reflection part of the portfolio all struggles and hardships on how they are able to stand and overcome those struggles. So the fifth steps in for portfolio developing assessment is identify the evaluate scoring criteria. By working on the students' criteria, students will develop greater ownerships of the process and will have experience in working cooperatively and collaboratively with you as a teacher. As the facilitator of learning, you are responsible to ensure the reliability and high quality of scoring criteria. The students should be informed on how you will evaluate their portfolio. So, since you are giving the portfolio assessment as a task, a scoring criteria is needed. You can see below the example of the scoring criteria in the math problem solving portfolio. So there is a content categories and there is a question to be completed by the students and the ratings from 1 to 5 that is be completed by the teachers. So this rating, it depends the outcome of portfolio its students, since students has their own unique way to in doing their portfolio. So expected there are also different scores to be received. So first of that criteria is quality of reflection, mathematical knowledge, strategic knowledge, and last is communication. So that is the example of math problem solving portfolio. So that's the last steps for developing a portfolio assessment will be discussed by Annie Rose Ayaon.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ana Rose Ayaon, and this is the continuation of Miss Aka report about Chapter 8, Designing and Evaluating Portfolio Assessment in the Classroom. So now, let's proceed to 1.6. Communicate the results of portfolio evaluation. The final step in implementing portfolio assessment is to conduct a conference with each student to review its contents, the student reflections, and assessment of the individual output. Portfolios can encourage students to take more ownership and responsibility over the learning process. In some schools, portfolios are a way for students to critique and evaluate their own work and academic progress. Often, during the process of deciding what will be included in their portfolios. So here are the checklists for implementing and using portfolio. Are students knowledgeable about what a portfolio is and how it will be used? Do students know why portfolios are important? Are the students responsible for or involved in selecting the content? Is there a sufficient numbers for examples but not too many? Is a table of contents included? Are specific self-evaluation questions provided? Is the checklist of contents complete? Are scoring criteria for individualized teacher written comments provided? Are student-teacher conference included? So again, these are the checklists for implementing and using portfolio. So now let's proceed to portfolio evaluation. Now there are three types of portfolio evaluation. The first one is the student evaluation. The second one is the teacher evaluation. And the third one is the student-teacher conference. So now let's discuss first the first one, the student evaluation. One advantage of portfolio assessment is allowing the students to revisit, reflect, and evaluate their own work. This allows them to practice critiquing and conceptualizing the quality of their work base and the criteria for performance. Teacher as a model should be the first person to demonstrate the skills and evaluating and critiquing portfolio. Here are some questions can be asked to facilitate student reflection for individual work, which give insights on how students have been reaching the learning targets. Why did you select this piece of writing? What did you learn from the selection? Can you identify your strengths and weaknesses? What problem have you encountered in doing the task? Which is the most satisfying experience? What are your insights after reading the poem? Is this your best work? What kind of work would you like to do in the future? So these questions will guide the students in constructing their self-reflection. Now let's proceed to the second one, the teacher evaluation. The teacher can use numerical scores to summarize judgment or a qualitative system. Scoring needs to be reliable and should not be affected by inconsistencies not related to the qualities being judged. The purpose of portfolio is to assess the students' outcomes of the instructional goals. The samples of entries are indicators whether students have achieved the goals of instruction, which are evaluated based on the portfolio's entire content, structure, and individual entries. The teacher is both the observer and director. And lastly, but not the least, let's proceed to the third one, the student-teacher conference. The conference should be scheduled throughout the year, which provides important link between the students and teachers. Your students can be responsible for conducting the conference, and this will serve as a motivating force for the learners to produce excellent portfolio in the future. According to Macmillan year 2007, Macmillan pointed out that students need to compare their reflections with your evaluations and make plans for subsequent work. Although weaknesses and areas for improvement need to be covered, emphasize students' progress and achievement as well. This also provides an excellent means of communicating with parents, as a tripartite communication between the parents, teachers, and students. Portfolio assessment provides framework for meaningful three-way discussion of the progress, achievements, and limitations. After the portfolios are complete, it is a good idea to have an exhibition or the portfolios and or student lead parent-teacher conference in which students present their portfolios to their parents. In this way, parents can appreciate their children on what they are working and also it can make them proud. Here are the checklists which can help you design and enhance your portfolio assessment program. A portfolio development checklist with the following guidelines questions. So first, what purpose will your portfolio serve? Second, what cognitive skills will be assessed by the individual entries? Third, what dispositions do you want interest to reflect? Fourth, what criteria or rubrics will you use to judge the extent to which these skills positions were achieved? Fifth, in rating the portfolio as a whole, what things will you look for? Sixth, what kind of skill will you construct to rate the overall portfolio? 7. How will you combine all your ratings into final grade? 8. Who will be involved in planning process? 9. What content categories are included in the portfolio? 10. Will learners have a choice over content categories? 11. Who decides what samples to include in each content area? 12. How many samples will be included in each area? 13. Have you specified deadlines of the entries? 14. Have you developed forms to rate and summarize ratings for all drops and final products? 15. What are your instructions on how work gets turned in and returned? 16. Where will the portfolio be kept and who has access to them? 17. Who will plan, conduct, and attend the final conference? And that is all for our group presentation. Thank you for watching and God bless everyone.